Before we start this episode, please be aware that we'll be discussing sexual violence, which could upset or trigger some people. I've provided links for support in the show notes.
I went out for a date and I don't remember what happened after the cigarette break between the starter and the main course. I suspect I was drugged. Funding for healing is broken, and we need to shift the story away from perpetrators towards victims and survivors. We're all waiting for healing, pretty much. And for me, that's just not good enough.
Hello, remarkable woman. I'm your host, Dr. Connie, medical doctor and survivor of sexual violence, and you're listening to Speak Shame, a collection of inspiring conversations with remarkable women who have faced and overcome adversity. By sharing their stories, my hope is that you may find strength, connection, and hope in your own journey, and that shame itself loses its power. Don't forget to follow the show. Joining me on this week's episode of Speak Shame is the remarkable Emily Jacob. Emily is the founder of Reconnected Life, a trauma-informed recovery organisation whose self-guided programmes are licensed by over 20 charities, National Health Service sexual assault referral centres, and universities across the UK, reaching more than 10,000 survivors. A keynote speaker, published editor, and late diagnosed with autism and ADHD, Emily brings both lived experience as a survivor and 25 years of corporate leadership to her work, closing the gap between disclosure and therapeutic support. She is the editor of To Report or Not to Report, launched at the Houses of Parliament, and a recipient of the Co-Women Outstanding Heroine Award. Her mission is simple: healing should not have to wait. So thank you so much, Emily, for joining me today.
Thank you, Connie. I know I came up with that bio, but it's still kind of weird to hear it being said.
It just reminds you of how amazing you are. I think our listeners are gonna grasp that very soon as well if they haven't done so already. So yeah, thank you for being with me. And I always like to kick off the podcast by finding out more about you, but I'm going to do it in a slightly different way. So my first question is, if your life story was turned into a book, describe for me what would happen in chapter 1.
Well, where would you start it? I think I would go way back to before I was born. And chapter 1 would start with the whispered myth of the family heritage, which has quite a few rebels in it, apparently. Now, I haven't done any fact checking, and my brother seems to think that my mum is making a lot of this up. But it would appear that we have the secretary to Parnell and the secretary to O'Connell on one side of the family, which is basically both sides of the Irish conflict. Apparently, we also have the first commissar for transport in the Leninist Trotsky government, and our relative, a great uncle, apparently got on a boat to Argentina, and apparently a cousin of mine travelled there a while back and met a lot of people who looked just like him. I don't know how much of this is true, but certainly I feel the rebel spirit inside of me. And so that's where the book would start, is with this heritage of kind of living up to revolutionaries, people who believed in something, whether or not we agree with what that something was. And I guess on the Irish conflict, relatives agreed with both sides. Anyway, but yeah, it's kind of like I feel the sense that of history, and I'm a trained historian. It's what my degree was about, and so I feel this history in the family, and I think that that's one of the driving forces for why I don't just settle for things. And if I see something that the writing, I tend to get all uppity about things. When I had a corporate career, I banned myself from joining the union because I was like, if I join, I'm going to end up wanting to lead it. So I kind of already, I knew that about myself, and I wanted at that time, I didn't want to push myself into anything that was revolutionary. But now I'm like, yeah, we have funding for healing is broken. And we need to shift the story away from perpetrators and towards victims and survivors. And it's good that we're talking about, and the government is talking about, halving violence against women and doubling conviction rates. These are good things to aim for. Don't get me wrong. That's very much focusing on perpetrators. And again, survivors' voices are being silent. And we're all waiting for healing, pretty much. I mean, a number of us have gone through healing and have managed to get ourselves to a place where, well, for me, I can speak for myself, I feel balanced most days. But so many are waiting and waiting and waiting. And for me, that's just not good enough. And so, yeah, so that's where my revolutionary heritage is being pointed at the moment. But that's where the book would start, would be kind of those threads of those familial myths. And then Emily was born the 15th of May, 1973. And so it started.
Do you know, I absolutely love that, Emily, because I think, first of all, you're my first guest who started their book before they were born. And I love that as a historian, you were like, no, we're going to get back into the history of this. Where did this revolutionary spirit come from? And I think that's such a wonderful way to start. And you touched upon some of the work that you're doing that really is bringing the voice of the survivor back to the fore. And whilst you notice that, yes, obviously it's a great thing that the government are looking to halve violence against women and girls, but really just remembering the survivor's voice. And I wonder then if you could take us on a journey of when you started doing this work and what led you to start doing this work.
So officially, I started doing this work sometime at the end of 2015, beginning of 2016. Reconnected Life was first called Openly Unique, and it didn't actually get born as Reconnected Life until August 2016. But Openly Unique had been going for a little while, stumbling along, trying to find its place before then. So that's the official time I started. But actually, I realized I started doing this work beforehand during my recovery, the years that I call my disconnected years, or sometimes I call it the abyss. I went out for a date, and I don't remember what happened after the cigarette break between the starter and the main course. Apparently, I drank a great deal of vodka. It was a Russian restaurant. And apparently I paid for the meal with cash. I know I did have a lot of cash with me, but I certainly had no cash when I woke the next day. And he must have somehow got my address. I suspect I was drugged. Apparently, you become quite truth-telling and give out a lot of information when that happens. And because I've been drunk a lot of times, let me be clear, I know how my body is when I've been drinking, and this was different. And I woke to find him on top of me. And so that was 2008. And I, yeah, there were 6 years. I was lucky in the sense that for me, my abyss years lasted for 6 years and not longer. At the time, Waitlists were not as bad as they are now. I thought it was an interminable amount of time, but it was only 3 months. I didn't know it would only be 3 months when I went on the wait list. And I think that was part of the problem of not knowing. But also 3 months now, you'd be like, huh, she's so lucky. What's she complaining about? I got help. I took my medicine. I went on to the group finishing program, finished that, thought, oh, I'm better now. I've taken the medicine that is prescribed for this thing. So I must be better. And I wasn't. Funny that. And I found a lot of, I'm coming to the answers to your question, by the way. I found a lot of comfort in Twitter. Twitter at the time was good Twitter. It was early Twitter where you could find community and you could find people who supported you and you could support. And I found a survivor community of people who, when I was having a panic attack at work and just sort of on my phone in the news, tears rolling down my face, reaching out to saying, help, I don't know what to do. People would come in and support me in that moment. Like I say, good Twitter. It used to be an amazing place. Not there anymore. But I started doing some writing, and for me, and I've since found in my recovery that journaling, I didn't know it at the time, but journaling is a real good tool for me to use. It gets stuff out. It helps me sort thoughts through. And I didn't start to do a lot of blogging. Some of it was quite dark, but I found myself supporting others and finding, as I say, this network. And I don't know if you remember, but there was, I think it's 2011 and 2012, or 2012, 2013, I'm not sure, Slut Walk. The very first Slut Walk, I really got involved with that. And I can't even remember what the slogan was, but they asked people to write why they were walking. So I wrote why I was walking, and they actually picked something I'd written there and used it as their slogan that year. I was like, oh my God, wow. And the next year I actually spoke at Trafalgar Square. I was like, wow. And so that was my first public speaking experience was Trafalgar Square. But so that, basically, looking back, I see that I was helping people on Twitter. They were helping me. I was helping people in comments on my blogs. I was reaching out, supporting Slut Walk. I did some videos for Slut Walk. Actually, the same day I was trying to get pregnant with a donor sperm. I did that, and then the next went off and did these videos. Crazy times. Didn't work, the pregnancy bit. But yeah, no. So it started before. It started before the business started. When I was training to be a coach, I was learning so much that helped me believe that my recovery could be real, that I felt that I had started going to a whole bunch of, how to start a business kind of seminars and things. And they all said you have to niche. And, I was like, okay, well, I had started my coaching training because I wanted to coach marketing people, just my background. But it soon became clear to me because what I was learning was helping me feel solidified, stabilized, reconnected. Hence, that's where the coaching business needed to start. And so that how Reconnected Life came out. And that was just such a long-winded way of answering the question. It's going to be like that, Connie. It's going to be like that. I always have used about 10 words where one will do. Writing my dissertation at university, I always said was never going to be a problem, and it actually wasn't. It was like, how do I cut it down rather than how do I make 12,000?
No, honestly, I love these conversations. So say as much as you want to say, and our listeners will listen to all of it, I am sure. And I want to thank you, obviously, for sharing your story, your survivor story, but also how that led you to where you are today, because I think that detail that you gave also helps for others who maybe think to themselves, actually, yeah, I'd like to be able to help someday, and might not realize that actually they're probably already doing it in some way, form or another, just because you don't necessarily have a business or a charity that's doing it. It's possible that you are doing that already.
Yeah. And I do agree with that. And it's a beautiful thing when you're able to do it. I look back actually, and on that day that I gave that speech at Trafalgar Square, I wasn't actually well enough to cope with the aftershock of having the adrenaline of having done that, making the mistake of looking at the comments on Sky News, and that was a bad night. So I'm really proud that I did it. And also, I would just want to kind of put a little warning of make sure you're well enough, and also never read the comments on the internet. We know this. I mean, we know this. It's an ugly place now. Back then, it wasn't as ugly, and I didn't realize it was as ugly. It's obviously becoming worse and worse as I don't want to go talk about that right now.
Going back to your point, actually, about making sure you're well enough to talk, actually made me think about the first time you disclosed to someone what had happened, because I think I always talk about empowering women to share the stories that shame has told them to keep silent. But what I really mean is sharing it with someone you can trust and not necessarily doing it publicly. And so I wonder if you could maybe take us back to that moment when you first told someone.
So I first told a very close friend who was amazing. She lives in Wales. I was living in London at the time, and she came all the way to stay with me and take me to the police station a month later when I was ready to. But yeah, she was the first person who I told, and she held it very well. One of the things that I talk about a lot as well is about how we disclose and being careful who we disclose to. As too many people tell somebody and it is not received in the way it needs to be received. It's not held with the care and honor that it needs to be held. And sometimes it's totally dismissed and disbelieved. And that shuts survivors up, sometimes forever. Sometimes they don't, will never say it again. And I think it was a Mumsnet survey from around 2014 or just around that time that found that 29% of survivors haven't even told their best friends. And that's a lot of us who are feeling really isolated, not being helped, not reaching out for help, trying to make it through the days, maybe feeling good. For some people, it can integrate what's happened into your being and move forward. For others, and for most, that's not that's not possible. And I really feel for those who have maybe trying to tell someone or feel that they can't tell someone. And when the attack happens and it's a family member or a member of your social circle or somebody at work, and so often these things are, it there could be so many barriers speaking up. When Me Too happened and Silence Breakers came on the front page of Time magazine, it was an amazing moment, but also it reminded me how much being able to say Me Too is actually a privilege, because for some there's just too much space to say that. And so where was I going with this? It was more around, yeah, I mean, I lost probably about a third of my friendship group. I had going to be the best woman for who had been my best friend. And when I told her that I wouldn't recommend somebody go to, wouldn't say you have to go to the police station and report, because of my experience of it being very re-traumatizing. And so I would say to somebody, this is what happened, this is how it was for me, and you have to make your own decision. She was like, well, then we're now speaking again. I don't know what she told the people at her wedding of why her best woman was no longer anyway, never mind. But I lost, I'd say, at least a third of my friends. And the survivors I've worked with who have disclosed to friendship groups can report similar stories of people just not knowing how to hold it. And often, even if you have the best friend, the best family who really want to support you, they struggle with seeing you hurt. And so often then you're spending a lot of emotional energy trying to hold them and reassure them that you're okay, when obviously you're not really okay. And so, yeah, speaking up, having your story validated, having what happened to you seen, heard, held, validated by another person is so important. It's kind of step one on the recovery from healing. Judith Kerr, I never remember her name, lady who wrote the book. The book with all the stages of recovery and validation of your story is basically step one. And yes, and it is empowering when it is held in a space that means that you can feel that the shame is not yours, that it was never anything you did. It was always the other person who decided they wanted something and took it. And they didn't need to be told no. You don't, just the other thing. For so many of us, we're unable to say no, or we've got our bodies have gone into flop or into freeze. The actual verbalization of no is actually quite a rare thing. So, and so many people have come to me and they've not realized, I didn't realize until I did the studying, the different trauma responses. I just thought it was fight or flight because that's what we get told about. And then your brain just goes, why didn't I fight? Why didn't I run away? Oh yeah, it's your fault. You didn't put up enough of a fight. And the thing is, that's nothing that we did. So yes, sharing the story is such an important part of our recovery. I was lucky enough to be able to share and talk about mine in empowering places, and at the beginning of when I was trying to do that. And I love what you do, Connie, in providing the safe space to hold that space, to let somebody be and tell the story in the way that matters to them. It's such important work. Thank you.
No, thank you as well. And I always say to all the women who have come on and been guests on this show, I'm so appreciative. And part of my story, I won't go into too much detail, but one of the things I talk about is how hearing another woman sharing her story was what inspired me, her courage inspired me to go and report. And so see other women do it. And obviously hearing you share your story, I'm just thinking about all the women who listen to this episode and men too, who may have gone through this experience and think, I recognize part of your story in my story. So thank you as well. And you went on to talk about that 3-month gap that was between initially going for treatment and then having the treatment itself. I wonder if you could talk us through what you experienced once you made it to the treatment and how you coped during that 3-month period.
To be honest, Connie, I don't remember.
Mm.
It's such a blur. I mean, it's a blur for many reasons, not least because 18 years have passed.
Yeah.
And I'm now at the stage of my life where most of life feels like a blur. But actually also because I was in an absolute limbo state. I wasn't working at the time, and so there was no structure to my days. I remember not wanting to ever sleep because the nightmares, and the only time it felt safe to sleep was the daytime. I remember that I ate microwave macaroni cheese for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And I'm not overstating that. It was the only thing I ate for about 3 months. And I put on 3 stone in that time. I had recently lost weight before going on that date, and being thin wasn't safe. I Getting to therapy, I was a very sullen client. I didn't really want to engage. I didn't want to open up about anything. There were too many tears that would just come, and it just felt so it took a while for me to open up a little bit. I remember one session where she had the ration dolls with the different pieces inside. I got very angry at that Russian doll and I threw it across the room. And she was so happy with me because I'd actually shown some emotion beyond, sort of engaged with it in some way, I suppose. But yeah, it's not an easy process to go to therapy. And it's not easy when you don't, when you don't know the kinds of things a therapist might be starting off with and taking you through. And that's why one of the other things I offer is sort of my programs that people that are licensed, helping people to get therapy ready because it's giving them some education around how the brain is working, how the body's working during trauma or after trauma. It's giving people some tools to sort of self-regulate and be able to self-rescue and to feel grounded. And that helps the therapist start with people at a slightly higher state of consciousness and awareness than I had been, for example, of just not too terrified really to know what was going to happen in this therapy session. So I'm really quite proud of that. I never thought of it as a get therapy ready package, but that's what the charities have named it. I claim that from them. I think it was actually Rothax in Rotherham who's told me that that's what they decided it was, and others have followed. So yeah.
Amazing. And I want to hear more about this work that you're doing. And I find it so inspiring to hear that you've created something, and probably not obviously consciously knowing that it's going to become this sort of get therapy ready package. But I wonder then where the ideas came from for what you were putting together. Were you thinking to those 3 months and thinking, well, what did I need? What would have helped me in those 3 months?
Yeah, I mean, it was when I was, as I said, when I was learning how to be a coach, I was like, okay, so here's some stuff that I really wish I had known back then. And I was also doing some reading around trauma and sort of Body Keeps the Score and all of that sort of thing. Body Keeps the Score actually came out, I think, about when Reconnected Life started, but all of that good literature that, so I was really kind of educating myself. And so many of the neuro-linguistic programming techniques that I learned through my coaching journey, I just felt, I wish I'd known that. I wish I'd known that way of thinking. I wish I'd known that technique and that tool. And so I started off with the coaching, but I wasn't coaching people who were in the, it's just happened in a very acute trauma space. I was coaching people who were I've been holding on to this for 20, 30 years, and I'm fairly okay on the outside, but I'd really like to start feeling okay on the inside. And that's different. This is very much not technical. I am not a medical professional in any way, shape or form, but in my head, I call them the acute stage and the chronic stage in terms of like when we've got acute illness or a chronic illness. So coaching fits the chronic part. But I was really aware that I wasn't offering anything for that acute part. And it was knowing that if I'd had some of this insight during my acute part, it wouldn't have been so bad. So basically, I created Taste of Recovery as an online mini course, sort of a online guided self-help for individuals. It's delivered to your inbox Monday to Friday for 3 weeks. If you had purchased it for the princely sum of £99, it's now £47 if you're purchasing it individually. And I'd never thought of it as being for charities. I'd never had the imagination or sort of the business acumen of this could be something that fits this. I just created it because I thought this is all the stuff I wish I had known, and I kind of packaged it into a way that makes sense to me. So this is kind of the learning bit, and then this is the self-rescue bit, and then this is the resilience bit. And so I kind of had it one step onto the other. And then I was, as an event, hosted in Birmingham by Lisa Thompson, who's the CEO of the Rape and Sexual Violence Project in Birmingham, RSVP. And she asked me what I do. And I told her about what I do. And she said, oh, that program, I'd like to know more about that. That could be useful to us. And she said, can we have a look at it? And I said, sure. And they just, well, what would it cost to license it? And I was like, I don't know. So that's how licensing to Charities was born. Originally, it was RSVP just for a very long time. So they licensed it for 2 years, and then they wanted to renew it. And Lisa asked if she could do a lifetime license so that they, as a charity, didn't have to keep asking for more money, which is I was like, oh yes, that's how charities work. Yes, of course. Duh. Basically, charities have told me what they want, and I'm like, yeah, okay, I do it. And then the pandemic happened, and more, people had to go online, and charities became more open to being able to offer online programs. And that's really when licensing took off. That's how it happened. I didn't have the idea to license to charities to help people become therapy ready. My idea was, this is all the stuff I wish I had known when I was feeling really lost. So here it is. Saves you having to search around on the internet for it. I mean, back when I created it in 10 years old now, in 2016, there weren't very many people coaches working in trauma. There wasn't really very much online, even from therapists, about trauma. Nowadays, there are lots and lots of people in the space. It's amazing, actually, and it's fantastic because there's too much business for us. I mean, I say that being entirely broke at the moment. So, but there's too many people need help. There's more people need help than there are us providing the help. When I started Reconnected Life in 2016, I couldn't find another coach who was specifically working in the trauma space for sexual violence. I found somebody in America, in San Francisco, and she was an amazing mentor, and she's still working today, and she's fabulous. Rachel Grant, Beyond Surviving. I will give her a shout out all the time. She was so helpful to me on my beginning steps. But now there's a lot of content, but you don't know if you're getting good quality content. And so the problem is the same but different. At the time, it was you couldn't find the content, and it was really hard as a survivor to try to find what you needed. And now the problem is there's just so much. How, as a survivor, do you choose what's good and what's bad? And so my hope is that through the fact that all the charities who have licensed, the universities, SARCs, they've all gone into the nuts and bolts of all of their lessons before they hand over their money. It's quality stuff. None of it's brand new. I haven't invented anything. It's just curated all in a place that makes sense and should help people to feel like they have the tools within themselves to not need to feel floundering at sea, and to feel like at least they're grabbing on a little bit of, and they're on a raft at least, rather than, and the sea isn't totally stormy all of the time. Yeah.
I love that description. And I think the work that you're doing obviously is fantastic, and it's obviously reached so many different areas. You talk about charities, SARC, universities. What is your kind of big dream, your hope for what Reconnected Life could become beyond that?
So, well, ideally, my hope is that I don't need to do this, and that instead I could maybe do a master's in neuroscience or something. But I would like, and the government is working in some way to train all GPs to be able to support with identifying domestic violence and helping with sexual violence and things, and being able to point people to the right resources. Well, I would like my programs to be freely available on the NHS site without anyone having to pay for them. The NHS can pay for them. Tell you what, it'll be a damn sight cheaper than anything else they're spending money on. I don't want to make enough money to never work again. I'm not asking for that. This is not, but I want, and maybe the NHS could get somebody else to create better lessons that do the same thing. That's fine too. That's fine too. I don't care if a competitor comes and supersedes what I'm doing and my business model goes out tomorrow. I want this help available to every single survivor on the internet, also via an app. I want a safe, enclosed AI where you can just talk to the AI and say, I mean, people are going on to Claude and ChatGPT and doing this now without it being in a safe enclosed space. And they're saying, this is how I'm feeling. What should I do? What is there a tool that I might be able to use? Is there a meditation you can advise? You know, people are doing this. I want it to be contained in something safe on the NHS site posted in every doctor's surgery, at every police station, at all the universities. Yeah, I just want it freely available to everybody who needs it. I don't want to have to spend my time. I'm not a salesperson. I don't want to spend my time knocking on people's doors saying, hey, are you aware I do this? And here it is. Would you buy it from me? I don't want to do any of that. That's not who I am. I want to focus on just helping the survivors. And yes, that's my vision. That's my dream, Connie.
Your passion just comes through the screen. I can really
Oh,
feel that, honestly, Emily.
oh,
And if anyone in NHS England is listening to this episode, please, please get in touch with Emily. And which actually reminds me, if there's an individual or a charity or NHS England, fingers crossed, or someone from the government who is listening to this episode now and they're like, I want to find out more about Reconnected Life, how can they find you? How can they find it?
well, Barry Gillian Merron, who is now the women's safeguarding lead since Jess Phillips resigned, has replied to my letter to Jess Phillips. Actually, I got the reply yesterday, and apparently I am going to be invited to the next stakeholder group. They didn't say when it was, so I've replied to say yes, please, and tell me when it is. But if anybody is listening who can, make this work get to where it needs to be. Mayors who are commissioning support for their areas, police commissioners, people in local government, people in government, people in the NHS, people working in the military, people working in the parole system, the prison system, girl guides. There are lots and lots of areas where lots of people who have experienced bad shit need support and help. And if you are in any of those areas or you have contacts in any of those areas, my website is reconnected.life. My email is emily@reconnected.life. And I would love to hear from you. Yes, thank you.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. I will put all of that into the show notes. And absolutely, whether you're in any of those areas or know someone from any of those areas, if you are listening to this, please, please, please reach out, share this episode, share Emily's details. We can really all work together here to make such a positive difference towards
And
survivors.
And if you're a survivor and you're listening, I have a free survivor supporting survivor Facebook community group. So if you're interested in that, look for the Reconnected Life community on Facebook. That's totally free. And if you are interested in purchasing these resources for yourself that I've been talking about, as I said, it's £47. It's lifetime. You don't pay anything more after that. And you can find everything that I offer at healingresources.reconnected.life.
Thank you, Emily. I will put that in the show notes too. And I wonder what you hope listeners will take away from hearing your story.
What I hope most always, and the main reason I speak out about my story, is that we do not stay forever broken. We are changed, but we get to choose who we want to be. And that doesn't need to be a broken version of ourselves. It's an absolute myth that keeps us feeling like a victim, that we will be always somehow less than what we were before. And that's just totally untrue. We we do survive, we can survive, we are surviving, and we can be so much more than we ever thought we might be. And I mean, I never thought I had any of this in me until I overcame PTSD and thought, geez, there's something there. There's a fire that I never knew was there. And so how do I harness it? You don't need to go out and, do something like this. I don't have children, so this is kind of where I put my energy. But your reason for healing might be because you want to be the best mother you can be for your children, or the best sister, the best, you don't need to have a lofty reason for post-traumatic growth or anything crazy like that. But I would just want people to know it's an absolute myth that we're forever broken. Healing is absolutely possible. You don't have to heal alone. There's a community of people of other survivors who will always reach out and catch you. This, you will be surprised at how many people you know who are also survivors, who will maybe be really relieved to know that they aren't the only one as well. And to stay connected to people like Connie, because it's really good to have role models who help us to get better and to be better and to stay on the pathway.
Oh, that's beautifully said, and thank you so much. And honestly, I'm not just saying this. I do feel the same way about us meeting as well. We had a conversation prior to this. We were like, "Oh my God, we're meant to meet." And I think there is just something so beautiful about being able to uplift one another and support one another in what we do. We have the same goal at the end of
Yeah,
the day,
yeah.
and so I will always champion what you're doing, and thank you as well for your kind words for me. And I also, just because you touched upon there that the fire that you didn't know was in you, and that kind of leads me nicely to the question of, how your experience has shaped who you are today.
Well, I can't deny that it has very much shaped who I am today. I mean, it's my business. So I'm quite resentful, angry, not sure what the right word is, about needing to almost define myself as somebody who this crappy thing happened to. And I will never, ever, ever be grateful for it having happened. I want to be very, very clear about that. That's not my vibe. I know it is just a lot for some people and that helps them. But for me, no. But it has shaped who I am. I have discovered that I have a core of steel, and I have bad times in my life, and I'm able to say to myself, actually, this isn't the worst thing you've got over worse. So you'll get over this. And that helps get through bad days. And yeah, it's it shaped me, and I'm not grateful for it. And I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of what I've done with the bad shit. Excuse my language, Connie. I'm proud of what I've done with that. And perhaps if it hadn't happened, I might have found a different way to surprise myself. But it's definitely shaped me in many, many ways. And what I think has shaped me most is the healing and the support that I've had from others. That's what shaped me, if that makes sense. It's not what he did. He doesn't, he irrelevant. What shaped me is what I did with things, who I reached out for, the help that I got, the fact that I kept hope alive and never lost track of this isn't the way I want to be. I'm going to find a way through. So yeah,
Yeah, you are
that's a hard
inspiring. And
question to answer.
yes,
That it really is, because
yes,
there's just so many bits.
yes.
But
Nuances, and absolutely, I completely understand what you're saying. And that underlying point of being proud of yourself and what you have done. And I think you're spot on about that. And I want to finally ask, if you had to name one remarkable woman who has inspired you, who would it be and why?
Well, I always go through a whole list in my head when I'm asked this question, and I always end up at the same one, and that's my granny Rose. So it's my granny on my dad's side. She was born into poverty in the East End of London. She became a lady, courtesy of my granddad having a job in the law where he was quite successful. But she never forgot her roots. Coming out of the Second World War, she helped set up citizens advice bureaus, and she always, she always believed in me. She always made me feel that I could do anything. And she had bright red hair to the day she died, and she died age 94. I'm sure it wasn't naturally red at that point. I think she was 94. God, family sees this. Oh, it's 93. Anyway, but yeah, she very much, and she's kind of always been who I want to be, making proud, looking down.
Oh, well, thank you, Granny Rose. And I'm sure she is listening to this episode thinking, that's my gal, that's Emily. So thank you to her. And thank you to you, Emily, as well. It's been an absolute pleasure having this conversation with you.
Thank you so much, Connie. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Speak Shame with me, Dr. Connie Corrali. And thank you so much to Emily Jacob for sharing your story with us today. Please take a look at the show notes for information on Emily's social media handles so that you can connect with her. If you'd like to join the community, head over to @Dr. Connie Corrali on Instagram. And if you're a remarkable woman who wants a weekly reminder that you were never broken, then sign up for my newsletter, Born Worthy. You'll find the link in the show notes. And finally, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast to get a new episode every other Thursday. Until next time, take care.